You started doing the work. You picked up the books, maybe hired a coach, joined the group, maybe even got into therapy. You're doing all the inner work. And you told yourself, this is it. I'm ready to feel better. But what came next wasn't better. It wasn't peace. It wasn't clarity. It was more confusion, more emotions, more fatigue. And you're starting to wonder, am I doing this wrong? So if healing feels heavy, emotional, disorienting, or even like it's making things worse before it seems to make things better, then today's episode is for you because there's nothing wrong. You're not doing it wrong. You're just in the middle. Welcome to the Core Happiness Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Banks, a mindset and positive psychology coach. On this podcast, we discuss all things related to creating happiness from within. So let's do it. Welcome back to the show. I want to start with a story that I wanted to share. I remember when I was deep in my first real season of personal growth, a season where I was kind of thrust into personal growth and transformation. So not necessarily chosen. And I finally had to say yes to doing this inner work that I think maybe I avoided for a long time. And I was reading the books, I was attending the workshops, I was journaling like it was my job. And still, I felt awful. Old stuff was coming up. I cried a lot. My sleep got worse. I second guessed almost every decision I made. And for a while, I truly believed something must be wrong with me. What I didn't know at the time was that healing doesn't always feel good. In fact, at first, it often feels worse because we're finally feeling what we used to numb or avoid or bypass. There's this myth that healing is supposed to feel like a glow up, like we just have our stuff together, we're doing great, and it's just a path that is filled with rose-colored lenses and butterflies and flowers. Like you'll start meditating and suddenly life becomes peaceful and this blissful space and you're vibrating at higher levels. And sometimes, yes, they are beautiful breakthroughs. But the reality for most people is you feel more emotional before you feel more empowered. You will feel more lost before you find true clarity. And you will feel more raw before you finally feel regulated. Because healing often brings everything to the surface that you were taught to suppress. And that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It actually means it's working. Because healing isn't linear. Progress does not happen in straight lines. You'll have days where you are clear and you're grounded, and then you'll have days where it feels like nothing has changed. And that back and forth is normal. In fact, that back and forth is a sign that your nervous system is recalibrating. So instead of being hard on ourselves and asking like, am I better yet? Why isn't this working? Try like, what did I learn about myself this week? Where did I practice showing up differently, even if it was messy? If you need to keep a small journal where you just track moments of clarity, connection, courage, no matter how small they are, because all of that creates data, and those data points help reveal our emotional trajectory and helps track our progress so we can celebrate those wins and actually see how we're healing in the process. And it's important to know that feeling more is part of that process. You're not regressing, you're not moving backwards, you're not falling into old patterns because you're going back and forth. You're assessing. You're finally allowing yourself to feel the things that you had to shove down just to survive. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you brave. It can be completely disorienting to suddenly feel waves of grief or anger or fear that you thought you had moved past and worked through already. But emotion doesn't move in straight lines. It's loops, it's layers, it's a ball of yarn sometimes. So, if this is you or you're having these feelings, then I want you to think about this question. If this feeling could speak, what would it say? And what need is it pointing me towards? So instead of trying to escape the emotion, try sitting with it 90 seconds and just naming it without judgment. This is sad. This is scary. I am safe to feel it. And then always remember, you don't have to do this alone. When healing feels hard, what most of us need isn't a more information or just to push through and soldier on. Sometimes we need co-regulation, a safe space, reflection support. And especially now in this day and age, people don't like to ask for help, right? A lot of people feel like we have to do everything on our own. But you are not supposed to be your own therapist, your own cheerleader, and your own spiritual guide all in one. That's not sustainable. It is not practical. Healing is never a solo project when you think about it. That's why you have therapists. It's why you have coaches. It's why you have mental health support. It's why you have friends. It's why you have family. It's why you have community. So if you are really at the point where you are resisting asking for help or accepting help, then I want you to ask yourself, where are you still trying to do it all alone? Where are you meeting that resistance to not accept help or ask for help? And then what would it look like to allow some support in, even if it's just 10% more than what you're doing right now? What would that look like? 10% more support. And if you're like, I don't know because I never asked for support, then I'll throw out some suggestions. Like it could be a friend who just listens without trying to fix anything, just provides you space. It could be a voice like this podcast. I mentioned therapy. It could be a coach. It could be anything that allows you space to feel. So I really want you to think of support as your foundation versus your last resort. When you have support, it allows you to feel seen, it grounds you, and it just reminds you that this part is part of it. This is part of healing. This is part of the process. So if you're in that messy middle, here are 3 reminders for you today. 1 is feeling like a mess doesn't mean you are one. That's probably the most important one. 2, there's nothing wrong with you. You're simply becoming. You are entering into this next phase. And 3, it gets clearer, it gets calmer, and you do get stronger. If this episode hit home and you're ready to walk through this part of your journey with more clarity and structure, I invite you to join the Core Return Reset. It is a self-guided course that helps you understand what you're feeling, reconnect with your inner guidance, and just shift from overwhelm to feeling more anchored. Because healing isn't about fixing you. You're not broken. But it is about remembering who you are and maybe who you've buried. Again, the link is in the show notes, and I would love to see you in there.